Hi, everybody. I was tasked with the interesting task of telling you what I think makes games company work, which is, of course, a very difficult question. And if I really knew the answer, I wouldn't be telling you. But I'll do my best. So to start with, it is really an amazing time to be in the games industry. And now the reality is that for the first time ever, each one of us has a game console in their pockets. Which is really changing the industry. And then what internet enables us is basically to deliver these games to our game console or to any game console whenever we want without having to go to the shop and stand in line and look at the shelves. And so, immediate play, immediate delivery is something that became a reality the last few years. And then with in-app purchase, basically a new way was invented to monetize games that allow us not just to make money off selling a game, a packaged goods kind of thing that you need to buy once, but actually you can monetize from giving something for free and then making money over it over time, which is what most of the people sitting here are doing. It's the highest revenue era of games ever, which is amazing for all of us. And it's no longer dominated by the giants. You've got to understand, we all don't think about it, but games used to be something controlled by the likes of EA, who did not really necessarily just do the best games, but they control the supply chain. And so to get a packaged CD to a store, you needed to control the entire supply chain. And so small indie developers had very little chances. And so today in our world, it's the best world, it's the best time for game developers. You can start a company, get a few people, get up a game, get it up on Google Play and the App Store, and there you go. So it's really amazing times. But still, despite these amazing times, this is really not something that investors picked up. And so when you look at investors today, there's very little VCs and also very little angels eventually that invest in games companies. And you need to ask yourself why. And the main thing that you hear again and again and again is that it's a hit-driven business. What does it mean, a hit-driven business? It means that you're not just building a company and that company can grow and grow and grow. You've got to get a hit, because if you don't get a hit, you're never going to be successful. And the fact that you need hits, which is the other industry that works like that is the movie industry, makes it very non-predictable. And as you know, investors don't necessarily, despite it being called venture capital, they don't necessarily like the risk. And so whatever requires hits is something that they have a problem with. On top of it, it's not just the risk and not just the hit-based business. It's the fact that what you really need is, on top of great skills, you need a bit of fairy dust. So we all know that you can take a great team with a good idea and good production quality, and they would build a game, and they would put it out, and it would look great, and it would not work. It would not yield the numbers that we want. And you ask yourself, how can it be? And the reality is that on top of everything, games is not just a science, it's an art. And being that it's an art, like any art, there's a bit of fairy dust, this kind of magical thing. And because the fairy dust test on developers and entrepreneurs was not yet invented, meaning that an investor can't take somebody and say, oh, you've got the fairy dust, it makes it very difficult for investors to choose who to invest in. Then, of course, the same thing that makes it great for this day and age, the fact that small companies can succeed, also means that there's very fierce competition, because basically everybody can start a games company. So we've got millions of games that compete against each other. The CPIs, which, so at the beginning of this industry, there were two things that, the beginning of the mobile industry, there were two things that still made sense despite all of that. The first one was that we had viral channels. And the second thing was that CPIs were not crazy, so you basically could buy and directly see a path to profitability. As most of the people sitting here know, the viral channels are dead mostly, and CPIs are growing exponentially every few months, so that basically you need a lot of money now to get above the water. And then, even when you finish all of that, because nobody knows whether your next game is going to be a hit, the multiples on exit are low, and so you look at companies, some great companies, and eventually they're trading at 5 or 6 EBITDA multiples, which are very, very low. So that's why investors don't like that. Why do I still invest in it? Because the first thing is that when you get it right, nothing grows as fast, and there's nothing like that feeling that you're sitting there and you're seeing your numbers go up, you're sitting on your dashboard, you're seeing numbers go up and up and up and up, and you love it. So that's one thing that I like. It's a very short path to market, meaning that once you put something out, you can know really quickly whether it's good or bad, which is something that I adore as an investor. There's growing talent pool in Israel where I make most of my investments, and so that growing talent pool means that I can get better and better teams. There are shortcuts, so if you know the platforms well, and if you know the marketing channels well, if you know people that can help you, there's many shortcuts that I think that I have, and so I enjoy investing in it. It's a lot of fun. Nothing beats sitting at home playing a game. My wife looks at me and says, "What are you doing?" And I say, "Oh, I'm working." I can't do that with enterprise software, so that's another thing. And the last thing is that I've been very lucky and I got good returns so far, so that encourages me to continue. But then the question is, are there really any rules that can help you or anybody else succeed in this game? And the answer is that there's no guarantees, but I did find over the years a few rules that I think are really critical for games companies. And I think if you follow these rules, there's a better chance that you're going to get above the noise. So the first thing, which, when I wrote this presentation, I thought, this is very similar to what I tell anybody on any startup, and actually on games it's the same. It's even more extreme. And the first thing is that there's no such thing as two good people. And the meaning is that often I get teams coming to me and say, "Well, who's your designer?" I say, "Well, we have somebody." Say, "Is he really good?" "He's okay." Who's your production manager? Who's your game designer? And the reality is that the company is really just the sum of its people. There's nothing else. Your idea, your IP, that's nothing. At the end of the day, it's just the people working in the company. And so you've got to only recruit the best. And when you found the company, you only need to basically get the best to work with you. And when I say the best, you need to look for the stars. Who are the stars? The stars are the ones that always act on their commitments. They always get the job done. They always do more. You immediately think, and who are these people in your organization. They're the people that care. And caring is a big word. They care about themselves. They care about their peers. They care about the company. They care about the product. They care about their bosses. They care about everybody. They love what they do and they have fire in their eyes. In every domain, it's very difficult to be great if you do not have that, if you do not have that passion. But in games, where you need to be passionate a lot about what you do, and you need to have that passion to basically kindle that art thing, it's even more important. And people that like data, because at the end of the day, it's very difficult to succeed without being able to read data. You need to hire for attitude and train for skill. This is really critical, because many people and many Israeli companies make this mistake. We look at the spec and we say, "Oh, the job spec, the guy needs to be a Java developer, da-da-da-da-da-da-da." Say, "Okay, this CV is good, this CV is bad." But the reality is that you can never hire just for skills. Now, I do not tell you to take the cleaner to be your head of architecture. That doesn't always work well. But what I'm saying is that if you get people with similar skills, or even one with slightly lower skills, but a better attitude, take the one with a better attitude, because you can always teach skills. It's very, very difficult to change somebody's attitude. And the attitude of the people in your company and how energetic and passionate they're going to be is going to be really critical in making your company successful. Always hire up. This is really, really critical. And many times people tell me, I really want to take this guy, but he is, he's we need him in a year's time. Well, the reality is very simple. If you're going to do well, you're going to need him in 2 months. And if you're not going to do well, it doesn't matter who you're going to take. And so always hire up. Always take people that are going to be above what you think you need, because that's going to be the key to your success. And then you've got to build a team instead of just a group of individuals. Many times I see people recruiting a bunch of people, and they're all the same mold. Kind of alpha dogs, very good at this, and there's nobody different. And if you recruit people that are not going to be more than the sum of their parts, they're not going to build a good team. So think about that. Think about your team. Have you done that? Have you built a team rather than just a group of people? Then don't be afraid to recruit different people. Again, I see teams that have, in Israel it's very common. You see a bunch of people, 5 people from the same unit exactly in the army that have done exactly the same route, worked in the same place, and now they're starting a company. Who's going to bring the innovative solutions? Who's going to bring the different angle? Who's going to think differently on that? The reality is that nobody. Some of the best people I've had are people that are not from that trivial, easy to follow route. People that are different, people come from a different direction, people that have done different things. Some of my best software engineers were not software engineers when they grew up. They were architects or they were something else, and they changed along the way and they became great software engineers. Some of the best CEOs I know did not come from the same industry. They came from somewhere else and moved. So think that different people are actually great for you. And the last thing, remember that this is a really, really slippery slope. And when I say slippery slope is that if we do not end up recruiting the top people, it's not just the impact of what they're doing in the company. It's the impact of what people they recruit. Because it's only A people that recruit other A people. You know, the B's and the C's, they recruit down because they're afraid, because they don't want the risk of somebody below them who's stronger than them. So it's only the really top people that understand that for them to succeed, they need to recruit other A people. And so if you don't start that at the beginning, you're going to get a big problem with your company. So number one thing, when I invest in a games company, I want to see the team. I want to see people that are passionate, that are great, that are A players. And this is the first thing that mitigates the risk of a games company. The second thing, which is, I have now an accelerator in the Valley, it's called NFX, it's about network effects. And one of the things that we do is that we try to set the speed bar of companies. And the speed bar of companies is usually set too low, meaning that people think that they're going fast, but are actually not really going fast. And in the games industry, it's very difficult to make that mistake. And you know, speed is the #1 competitive advantage of a startup, because at the end of the day, the big guy can have more engineers, can have more servers, can spend more money on marketing. The only thing that a startup has is speed. And so if you end up not really being fast, you're going to end up losing to the big guys. And my partner in NFX has this saying that I love. He says, how can I explain to you how important speed is? So think that you're playing chess against a grandmaster. You're going to lose, right? But now think that for every move he makes, you can make 2. Okay? Even I would win in such, in such terms. And this is exactly the startup against the large company. The large company is better, stronger, whatever, but the startup can take 2 moves for every move the big company makes. And so if you're not doing that, you're just not going to succeed, because there's no way you're going to beat the big guys. And many times I hear people coming to me and saying, well, we're going to have a game in 18 months. And you're going to give us the money now, and you're going to see something in 18 months, and it's going to be great. And I say, well, if you're going to build something in 18 months, there's no point of starting. We have no idea what's going to happen in 18 months. We have no idea whether the devices are going to be the same, the customers are going to be the same, the leading games are going to be the same. Nobody knows. And so it's really critical that you move faster. If somebody comes to me and says 18 months, I say, okay, go and revisit this. If you can't put something out in a few months, something playable in a few months that I can see, that where the core games loop can be tested, then I'm not interested, because I have no idea how the world's going to look in 18 months. And this is really something that many of the young companies say and needs to be taken out of the dictionary. And speed is mostly limited by our assumptions. It's by our assumptions of what is possible. We think that we cannot move faster. But whenever you think you can't move faster, the reality is that you can move faster. And you can move faster because you're small. You can move faster because you're nimble, you're agile. And this is really critical. And one of the ways to overcome it is to really prefer speed to perfection. Now, that does not mean that you're going to put out a horrible game and it's going to not work and it's going to be fully buggy. That's not what I mean. But between waiting for perfection, and I have one of my companies that is now delaying its launch for now 4 months because they think it's not perfect, and that really upsets me. It really upsets me because in these 4 months, there's more competitors, they're losing traction, they're burning money, and their game 4 months ago was actually okay. They could have put it out and they could have learned a lot with, and now these learnings are gone. So I really prefer speed to perfection. It's really, really critical, because that's what's going to get you to succeed. And don't overthink. And when I say overthink, we Israelis have this tendency to brainstorm and do another brainstorm and consult with people and again and again and again and again. And this overthinking eventually slows us down. So make sure that you don't, because this is really going to be very negative to your business. And then whenever you think that you can't go faster, insist. And there's a story about one of my companies in NFX. They came to me and said, we have a problem. We launch a version every month and it takes us a lot of time. And I said, well, what do you want to do? They said, we want to move to weekly. And I said, don't move to weekly. Move to daily releases. And said, what can you do in the daily release? I said, let's find out. What's the most important feature you have now? And they said, we want payments. I said, okay, how long does it take to implement Stripe? And they said, I don't know, but probably a week. I said, okay, let's see if you can do it in a day. So from 8 o'clock in the morning till night they worked, and by the end of the day they had Stripe fully implemented after QA. And so we started working every day in the morning. What can we do today? And if it's more than 1 day, we don't do it now. Now, of course, later on there were features that took more than that, but the reality is that they got addicted to this space. And getting addicted to the pace is really critical. And the way to do it is through methodology. It's through finding ways that work for you to accelerate. And at the end of the day, just to give you a perspective, if you focus on speed, you're going to cut down around 50% of your development time, which is really critical because that's what's going to make you successful. The third thing is that you need to remember that there's always a reference for a game. And this is very specific for games companies. And most great ideas had a reference before. That looks familiar, but that is actually not Clash of Clans. This is Backyard Monsters. And that's even not the first one. And that looks familiar, but that's actually Bejeweled. Okay, it's not Candy Crush. And again, in Game of War, the Plarium was before, and Kabam. And way before that, there were Trevian and Icarian, for those of you that are old enough to remember. And so every good game has a reference. And the reference can be from console, can be from PC, can be from another mobile game, can be from everything else. But you really have to find your reference, because if you find it, it saves you month of your thinking, month of analyzing, month of trying things. Because once you have a reference, you know what worked and what not. And you need to basically put this into your thinking process. And even if there's no really direct game reference, you need to find references that are references for your core game loop, or for parts of your core game loop. And whatever you find is going to save you a lot of time, so make sure you do it. And if you don't have a reference, it doesn't mean that you can't go on, it's fine. But it does mean that you need to worry a little bit, and you need to prototype it really quickly and put it out in the hands of people really quickly, because if there's no reference, either you're onto something new and great, which is phenomenal, or you've got a problem because this is a game loop that's been tried before and doesn't work. The fourth thing is, this is one of my favorites and one of the most important things, is not to give up on customer love. And every game deserves to be loved. And when I say deserves to be loved, it's love that you actually feel. Love that you feel from your customers, and you see it in the reviews, and you see it in the comments. And I've chosen 3 games that are dear to my heart. There's Playtika here, and there's Space Safe from London, and there's Slotomania. And if you look at this, I don't know if this works, but if you look at these bars, and you look at kind of the ratio of these bars, you'd see that the good games, the ones that get customer love, they really get the customer love. And then you get many of these reviews, kind of the 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, great, amazing, and you really can't give up on it. And many of the companies give up on it. And that's another one. This is a company called Zen Gaming, and they came to NFX in June, and they iterated and iterated and iterated, and they got a bit of love here, and then suddenly here they released a new version, and look what happened. They found the love. And when they found the love, they grew from a few hundred registrations per day to a few thousand, and that happened with zero marketing, 100% organic, just by finding the love. And giving up on the love is very easy. How many times have you heard, it's going to come later, the next feature is going to fix this, the users are going to learn the game, to love the game later on. Well, the reality is that that's never the case. Never accept it. It's hardly ever a feature thing. I don't know a single game that came out and people didn't like it, and then they added a few features and people did like it. That doesn't work like that. If your core game loop is not working, if your core concept is not working, it's not going to suddenly start working. So don't fool yourself, and make sure that you're looking for that customer love. And there's a saying that I love from one of my friends in the Valley. He says, if you're not sure that you're the winner, it's very simple, you're not. And so if you're putting out your game and you're not sure that this game is a winner, it's probably not. Taking tough decisions is key, and a startup can't do everything. You need to do less, but do it really well. And choosing what not to do is as important, if not more, than choosing what to do. And that's really critical, because at the end of the day, you can't do everything all the time. So you really need to choose your battles, and you need to choose them one at a time, and you need to decide what you're focusing on now. Go get it, go do it, see if it works, move on to the next thing, and so on. And many times, what I see is that I see companies that are trying to tackle 20 things at the same time. We're going to change this and this and this and this and this. And first of all, they can't do all of it because they're a small company. But second thing, even if they do, they're going to end up not knowing what made the impact. So again, shorter iterations, one battle at a time, find what you want to do, go for it, do it, check it, iterate fast, move on. That's the methodology that works. And always, always, always iterate fast, and don't fool yourself. One of the biggest problems is that we fool ourselves. We say, well, it's not really working, but it's not really bad. The mattresses, they're okay. Well, they're not. If they're not good, they're not good. Move on, iterate again, and constantly improve. Constantly, constantly, constantly improve. This is really, really critical, because this is the way a game evolves. You find the core thing, you find the love, you start pushing on it, you iterate and iterate and iterate to make it better and better and better. That's the way to build a game. And you've got to build big, bold moves. You know, many of the companies end up making too small changes. You know, small change, that doesn't work. If an iteration doesn't work well, the change needs to be big. That's what a startup can do. That's what a big company can do. And if you don't move fast to these big changes, you're not going to succeed. Next thing is, that's a short one, that's being data-driven. And you know, every company really needs to know what's its KPIs. You need to understand what are the KPIs for now. You need to understand how to measure them, and you need to really, really drill down on them and understand whether you're meeting your goal KPIs or not. And if you don't do that, you end up not being able to make your decisions based on data, which is critical. And you've really got to put it not just in the, you know, many people put it on customer acquisition and A/B testing, but it's not just that. It's measuring and analyzing retention, and measuring and analyzing engagement and monetization and everything. That's really got to be something that everybody decides with. So everybody in your company needs to have access to data, and everybody needs to get data into their decision process, because if they don't, they're going to end up not succeeding and making the wrong decisions. And clearly, you know, find out also your competitors' KPIs. This saves you years and years, you know, a bit of espionage work, but you need to try, you know, being it from tools like, you know, SimilarWeb or others, or being it from other places. You need to find what are your competitors' KPIs, because if you know that an equivalent game that you're trying to compete against, which has a similar core game loop, is at 72%, you know, day one retention, and you're at 20, you know you've got a problem. But if you think that they're at 30, you may think that you're okay. And I see it all the time. People that don't know the KPIs in the industry end up coming and saying, well, I've got great KPIs. I look at their games, I say, you know, you've got nothing. You don't understand. And that actually takes you a lot of time. And of course, one thing though, avoid analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis when you overanalyze. So again, don't analyze everything all the time. Choose your core KPIs, follow them, and make them part of your decision process. Last thing is building a good game. Now that's, of course, that's kind of trivial to say, but a few tips on that, something that are more specific to games. First of all, play your own game like crazy. You know, if you do not eat your own food, you're never going to succeed. Your entire team needs to play your own game. The PA needs to play the game, the QA guy needs to play the game, the marketing guy needs to play the game. And they need to be, if there's alliances, they need to be part of an alliance, and they need to play daily. And if they get bored of it, they need to say, and they need to say why. So really, do that. You do not understand how many companies don't do that. Make onboarding as easy as possible. You know, we are now tired consumers. We get hit with so many games every day, so many different things. If onboarding is complicated, people just walk away. So make sure that onboarding is really, 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 really simple. Make sure that daily engagement is a core part of your game. I see so many games where there's no thinking about what could make this game a daily experience. And this is so trivial, because a game that does not turn itself into a daily experience, a game that does not have it built into its own core game loop that you need to come every day, has got very little chances of monetizing well today, and hence have got very little chances of being able to be pushed up the charts. Build your game for revenues. This is really critical, because at the end of the day, people say, well, I'm building this game and eventually I'm going to monetize it somehow. But if the monetization loops are not part of your game, then it just doesn't work. Imagine that Supercell would have released Clash without any monetization, so you could build everything for free. How do you add monetization into that later? Okay, so think from the beginning what's going to be your monetization loops, because if you don't, later on adding them in is going to be very difficult, and that's going to upset customers, as well as eventually get you lower ARPDAUs, which is going to make it impossible to push. Production quality, so that's kind of counterintuitive to what I said about moving fast and really, really going out there quickly. But do remember that customers today have a minimal requirement in terms of production quality. And as your game becomes better, and as you're starting to see good numbers, rather than just working on features, make sure that you also fix everything on the production quality side. Because as the game is going to go wider and wider, and more people are going to play it, it's going to be very difficult to get everybody excited about it if the production quality is not phenomenal. Create sufficient depth for VIPs. And I don't think many of you really seen the numbers of some of the big games I have, and the percent of revenues coming from VIPs, from your heavy whales, the top guys that spend a lot of money, is unbelievable. You know, in some games we're talking about people that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month if you take Game of War. And so, you know, you've got to understand that these people, they get to the end of your game in no time. If they fall in love in your game, they're just there at the end. You know, you've got 50 levels, they're there. You've got 200 levels, they're there. If you're not going to work on depth of interaction and content for them, they get bored, they go away. So it could be more content, it could be more levels, it could be more work to be done on the alliance side and on socializing sides, like Game of War. But it's got to be something that eventually is going to give them the depth to keep them involved. Because once you get one of these, losing them is really sad because there's so much money. And respect your players. This is really critical. At the end of the day, I see many games companies that just don't respect their players. And when I say respect their players, think that you are potentially the customer on the other side. You know, would I have enjoyed that had I been the customer? Would I have enjoyed being forced to pay for that? Would I enjoyed, I don't know, losing all of my troops and going back 3 weeks in what I've been doing because I just lost one battle? So really respect your customers. Put yourself in their shoes and saying, is this the way I would like to be treated? So to sum up, gaming startups can achieve today more than ever before, and it's amazing because we see tiny companies that have raised not a lot of money that are really making a dent in the gaming industry, and this is phenomenal. You've got to ensure you've got the best team, you've got to ensure that you move fast, you find your references, and seek the love of customers, all of that using data, because that's what's going to get you to understand. You've got to build good games that you'd like to play. It's an amazing time to be in the game industry, so I love it, and I'm sure that you all do. And have fun, because it's all about fun. Thank you.
We have time for just a couple of questions.
No questions is good. There's one there.
First of all, thank you for an amazing presentation. A short question, you said it's a great time for investors to go and invest in the gaming companies. Personally, I get a feeling that a lot of investments have been done lately in the gaming companies all over the world. Do you believe this time is going to last?
No,
are we over some kind of hill that's going to get down?
So actually I said it's a great time to be in the games industry. On the investment side, it's actually tougher. We don't see a lot of investment. We see lots of funds that are actually going back from investing into games, or saying we've got exposure to one games company, that's enough for us now. I see this all the time. I think that I see quite a few investments that VCs that do not understand anything in the games industry made that are not going to be very successful. On the other hand, I see the smart investors in games making some phenomenal things, and if you look at what Axel did in Supercell, or what Apex did back then from King, and so these are returns that you don't get in almost any other industry. So hopefully there's going to be more money flowing into the industry, because it's pretty critical for the growth of the industry.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about rule number 3. All great games have references. Could you please explain some other words about reference?
So when I say a reference, what I mean is that when you want somebody to play a game, at the end of it, there could be many things around it, but there's a core game loop, which is what you want the player to do. In Pac-Man, it was moving right and left, or up and down, and choosing and eating dots and running away from ghosts. In Clash of Clans, it's building your town or your village, and then training soldiers and going to attack others alone or together. So these core game loops are things that, if you track them backwards, they tie into human mentality. And many of them are basically, you can find them in games that are hundreds of years old. Okay, in genres that are strategy or are arcade or whatever. And clearly most of the games that we're seeing today, you can find the reference, which is the same core game loops, in many previous games. I'll give you an example. There's a game called Crossy Road, right? And that's been fairly successful. When I was 13, I think I programmed the Crossy Road on my Commodore 64. And I did not invent it, I copied it already from somebody else. And so these references, they're critical because they tell you whether what you're going to do has been tried before. If it had been tried, how big was it? So for example, if you look at, if you look at a game that was done by a good studio and you see that it only got here and the game quality is good and you don't have any great idea, then your chances developing the same core game loop to go above that are not very high, right? So basically by looking, understanding, and analyzing, you get to the point that you can actually save yourself month on month of deciding what you're doing or how much money it's worth putting on it, on everything else. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks. Really interesting lecture. You just mentioned you got really good returns on certain games. What are the top games that you choose to invest in? Is it casual gaming like Candy Crush, some stuff like that, or multiplayer role games? Or what kind of games have given you the best returns, and what games are you looking for, or you think the market is looking for mostly today invest in?
So I invested up till today, I think, in 12 game studios over the years, and I think that 5 of them were sold. The 2 genres that worked best for me are genres that are where there's a core competition in Israel. There's no console gaming here. There's very little gaming experience here now. Thankfully, it's growing. But the 2 genres that work really well for me are social casino, where I invested in. I was a sort of semi-founder investor, first investor of Playtika, and that worked fairly well. And then there were a few others in this field. And the second one is in MMO strategy, where I invested in Plarium, and that's going amazingly well as well. But in general, I don't invest in console because I don't have access to the right companies, and the money required is much higher. But again, everything which is fast moving, everything where I think that a young, talented team can make a dent is where I'm going to go.
Thank you very much.
Let's give a round of applause to Gigi. Thank you very much.